No, oh, hang on. Spoiler alert! Okay. No, I am your father.
Well, then.
Happy Feet! Wombo combo!
That ain't Falco.
That ain't Falco! Oh!
Everything changes.
Hello and welcome to my third video gambit. Today we'll be discussing what makes a good plot twist a good plot twist. If you didn't gather from my intro, today will be riddled with spoilers, so you've been warned. I was originally going to make a video review of the Avengers Infinity War or Solo: A Star Wars Story. But the internet is already full of videos that talk about the ginormous success that is Infinity War and how Han Solo continues to fall into mediocre obscurity. Therefore, with the release of Incredibles 2 on the way, I decided to cover a topic that really hits close to home, as I hope that this one crucial, really important aspect of filmmaking does not negatively affect the movie that I have been waiting 14 years for. So without further ado, let us jump in to what separates a great plot twist from a terrible one. In today's filmmaking, it seems that the plot twist has become overused and almost cliche and scorned every time it is used in such a predictable manner. "Oh, I totally didn't see that one coming," might be the obvious phrase that comes to mind. But then on the flip side, if no plot twist is implemented in a story whatsoever, the movie could be criticized for being too bland, boring, and once again, predictable. Where was the dramatic effect? What was going to keep me guessing? How am I supposed to stay on the edge of my seat when I already know what's going to happen? For a while, this has been a problem with many Marvel films and even some Disney ones. Namely, every Marvel movie up until Infinity War and most of the recent Disney animated films, such as Frozen or Big Hero 6. So let's try and take these in a logical order. First, we'll just start with Frozen. Detracting from an already only slightly above average movie, if I'm being generous, is the plot twist near the end where Hans turns out to be a power-hungry murderer who is so desperate to finally seize the throne that he is willing to marry a princess from another land, kill her sister and her in order to steal it. Now, this doesn't work for a couple reasons. First, this character has barely any screen time. We don't get to understand any of his personal motivations, how his character develops, or what he's even there for, other than to play the stereotypical Prince Charming coming over the hill on a white horse. Anna learns throughout the movie from her sister who she doesn't trust and a random stranger that she just met not to fall in love with a random stranger that she just met, even though she winds up falling in love with the random stranger she just met at the end of the movie anyway, so what's the point? Just don't trust every random stranger, and remember stranger danger only half the time, I guess. Whereas stereotypical Disney movies have a 100% success rate of finding Prince Charming on the first try, Frozen knocks it down to 1 and 2. Plus, this created a plot hole in the movie where Hans, if he was going to kill Elsa and Anna anyway, by the end of the movie, why did he save Elsa in the first place? He could have let the guard with the crossbow shooter and went back to Arendelle and said, "I did all I could, but I was too late." Perhaps if Duke Weaselton, a character who we know is a bad guy from his first line, was not in the movie, then a lot of the bad guy traits attributed to him could have been given to Hans and made him a better character and given him more screen time, thus making the plot twist a bit more impactful. But I digress. Let's move on to Big Hero 6. In Big Hero 6, we have what has been called the Callahan fail. Here we are presented two rivals, Callahan and Cray, and neither of them like each other because, of course, Cray is responsible for the premature death of Callahan's daughter. The problem where this plot twist lies is in the fact that Callahan is set up as a loving teacher who cares about his students and values their education. And then, once again, after very little screen time, turns out to be the guy that burns down a campus building, kills Tadashi, tries to murder his students, and suck up an entire corporation full of people, along with his archenemy, into a portal of death that his daughter was sucked into. Now, either this is just me, or this is an entire subplot that was developed way too late in the film to even be relevant. Not to mention, the only setup that we get to try and have any inkling of a payoff is the fact that Cray and Callahan share a dirty look along with Callahan's one-liner that Cray cannot be trusted. Either this entire subplot would have needed to be reworked, or perhaps, albeit more cliche and predictable, the bad guy should have been Cray, Tadashi and Callahan could have died together, and Cray stole Hero's nanobots in order to complete the project he was unable to do by himself after his funding was pulled because of the accident with Callahan's daughter. That way, instead of having to figure out how a teacher on a college teacher's salary was able to afford a manufacturing plant which could reproduce Hero's amazing nanotechnology, we have Cray, who of course would have had the funds to set up a shadow corporate factory to produce bootleg copies of other people's inventions. Callahan's daughter can still be trapped inside the portal and Hero and Baymax can still rescue her, but this way, Tadashi's sacrifice was actually meaningful. That way, Callahan's daughter goes from an unnamed individual who was part of a side plot and had no lines in the film to someone who Hero could emotionally bond with because he didn't get to save Tadashi or bring him back because he was only gone, and this is the person that he got to save. So now I've talked about 2 plot twists for the last 7 minutes, and there are obviously many more I could go on and criticize to my heart's content and try and rework in my little fan fiction, but how about we try and study what makes a good plot twist and how The Incredibles 2 can make good use of this information. Originally, I was going to pour over some of the biggest plot twists in cinema history one by one, such as Citizen Kane or The Sixth Sense or The Unusual Suspects, or even Star Wars Episode 5 with the quote that I started this entire video gambit off with. But instead, I'm just going to list what I believe constitutes as a good plot twist, how I believe it should be implemented, and I will reference these movies as I go. So, Rule 1. The plot twist needs to add to the story, not detract from it. There are a lot of movies that the plot twist, instead of answering questions or creating a treasure hunt where you can rewatch the movie over and over again and see how many hints and tips there were that this plot twist was coming, they instead create a whole bunch of plot holes, completely confuse individuals, and in essence, rewrite the story so that the ending is nothing like the beginning of the movie sets it up to be. For this example, I'd like to reference The Dark Knight Rises and The Sixth Sense. In The Dark Knight Rises, the plot twist is that Bane is not the main villain of the story. Instead, he was just another pawn in the army of Talia al Ghul, the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, a character who we haven't seen since the first movie several years prior, and Talia, who we've never been introduced throughout the entire franchise up until this point. Instead of putting hints throughout The Dark Knight Rises, or even The Dark Knight that Talia was somewhere out there pulling the strings, we get her out of the blue, and it completely wrecks the iconic aspect of Bane, where he appears in the movie to be a brilliant military leader with strong conviction, until he's revealed to once again just be a pawn of somebody else. Conversely, in The Sixth Sense, you have the movie starting off with a home invasion where you don't know what happened to the occupants of the building until the end of the movie, where the kid that claims he can see dead people turns out to actually be seeing the dead occupant of that house in the beginning of the film. This causes you at the very least to go and re-watch the beginning of the movie to see how it is that instead of living in that scenario, the main character actually dies and doesn't even know it until the kid reveals it to him. Alright, rule number 2. A plot twist must make sense and be consistent with the film. For this, I'm going to compare Ready Player One and Soylent Green. For two reasons. Mostly because I didn't like Ready Player One and I want to pick on it in some fashion. And secondly, because it's 10 o'clock and I've got work at 6 in the morning. There are probably some better examples you could think of on your own where a plot twist turns out to create more plot holes than plot depth. But in Ready Player One, let's take the only plot twist that I can think of. The ending where the butler in the Oasis turned out to actually be Halliday's long-lost friend. Was Halliday's friend the curator consistently for the 5 years that Halliday's challenge was ongoing without a break? Or perhaps was he an NPC that Halliday's friend took over some of the time? And then that begs the question, how many people in the Oasis are really NPCs that are controlled by humans some of the time? Oh my gosh, does this at least create a chosen one storyline where Halliday's friend decided to choose Parzival as the successor simply because of his somewhat worthy merit? I mean, he would have died without that extra life. So is that showing favoritism in what's supposed to be a fair contest? Now, I know I'm stretching things a little, but you at least get the point. But in contrast to this, we have Soylent Green, where it's not out of the ordinary to believe that where dead people is a natural resource in a dystopian post-apocalyptic future that become a natural food source. My third rule is that every plot twist should be accompanied by some sort of quotable or relatable moment. Whether this be the revealing "I am your biggest fan" in the original Incredibles, or the far more quotable
Buddy? My name is not Buddy!
Or BioShock's "Would You Kindly," or any of these.
Silent Breed is people! You maniacs! You blew it up!
No, I am your father.
Say what?
My fourth and final rule is, do you even need a plot twist? For this, I'd like to compare Avengers Infinity War and Star Wars VIII The Last Jedi. Now, personally, I love The Last Jedi, and I enjoyed every aching plot twist scattered throughout that very unpredictable movie. But understandably, there were some that did not enjoy these plot twists. However, Avengers Infinity War seemed to do everything Star Wars VIII got wrong right. There could be an entire video gambit just comparing these two films, and especially one comparing how fans reacted to both. But I'm not going to get into that today. I mostly want to talk about The Last Jedi versus the ending of Avengers Infinity War, which I consider to be the plot twist to 10 years worth of monotony and buildup. Whereas The Last Jedi seemed to lose audiences over the fact that they did not believe the story would go a certain way, Avengers Infinity War seemed to shock the world because they didn't believe the writers would go that way. Now, I'm not sure which is more important or which holds more dramatic effect, but I can recognize these instances that epitomize the difference between the two kinds of plot twists. For example, I don't think anyone who saw Star Wars Episode 7 could imagine that the story was going to take the route it did in 8, with a broken and disillusioned Luke, with a Super Leia flying through space, with Admiral Akbar having an unglorious death, I don't know if that's a word, and especially with Rey and Kylo having such dynamics after their previous encounters. But the biggest one of them all being the untimely demise of Snoke, whose backstory was never explained. This is one area of the prequels that I give a lot of credit to for having such a big non-reveal by letting the audience finally know in Episode 3 that Chancellor Palpatine is the evil Sith Lord, because we already knew where this was going, and we already knew that Ian McDiarmid was the actor from Episode 6. And we finally received the payoff to the 3-movie build-up we were hoping for. To me, The Last Jedi didn't do this. It did it unconventionally, and I liked that. To others, they didn't like it. and this is what makes Infinity War such a head-scratcher. The part of the story where Thanos snaps his fingers and turns half of the universe into ashes was not beyond the realm of possibility. That is literally the beginning of the Infinity Gauntlet comic that came out in the early 90s. I saw this coming a mile away because there was a lot of foreshadowing leading up to this event. However, I couldn't believe the amount of people astonished that the writers actually had the guts to go through with this. The amount of emotional breakdowns on the internet, the memes, but most importantly, the 10-year conditioning of every Marvel movie giving us the same thing time and time again. Bad guy rises up, good guy fights bad guy, good guy wins at the end. This is the first time in 10 years we've seen a Marvel movie, the first Marvel movie ever, to have the bad guy win at the end of the movie, leaving the heroes defeated and with no hope. Now, the great thing about this is that in the larger grand scheme of things, this technically isn't even a plot twist, but it was a twist that people were not expecting. It was consistent, it was quotable, and it was necessary. It added to the plot, and it set up expectations even higher for Avengers 4. And it is in this way that I believe Incredibles 2 can learn both from itself and from these past movies and others about how to actually do a good plot twist, if at all. Brad Bird seems to have an interesting habit of always introducing his villains in the middle of the movie, but in no uncertain terms defining that character as the villain. Look at Iron Giant. Look at Syndrome. Look at Tomorrowland. Each time he introduced the villain and made known to the audience, if not the main character right away, that this is the villain. Therefore, the entire point of this video is based solely on my concern that we are going to get a Scooby-Doo-like unveiling of Screenslaver in Incredibles 2 as one of the Devers controlling the superheroes for some either personal gain or entertainment value, and I really just don't want some kind of twist that is so cheap to be in the sequel to probably one of the greatest superhero films of all time. Now, hopefully it follows my 4 steps to having a great plot twist, but as I said, the original Incredibles, Avengers Infinity War, great superhero movies that didn't even need a plot twist. Now, I like Scooby-Doo, but I like Scooby-Doo as Scooby-Doo and Incredibles as Incredibles. Hopefully you found this video entertaining and informative. I'm looking forward to seeing Incredibles 2. It's coming almost 15 years too late if you get the reference, but I hope to be giving it a favorable review in my next video gambit. I'll see you then. Now, if you like this video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video gambit. And, by the way, as a personal update, I just want to say that Avengers Infinity War, to me, is the greatest superhero movie of all time. Maybe not the best comic book movie of all time, but definitely, in my opinion, the greatest superhero movie of all time. And I know it's been getting a lot of bad press, but I do recommend that if you can, go see Han Solo, A Star Wars Story. It's my second favorite Star Wars film ever. I know that's not a lot, but I enjoyed it, and I think it's really worth the watch. Have a great day.